Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Emmanuel, and today we're going to be learning about collaboration with Git. Now, before now, we've actually been, working on projects where we just introduce new features, so we haven't worked with any team whatsoever. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to show you what it feels like to work with other people, right? And we're going to see some of the limitations, and we're going to see how Git comes in to make things easier. All right. So first of all, I'm going to start by giving you an illustration of what happens when we try to collaborate. Now, first of all, let's go ahead and see this beautiful app that we have. So this is me, and I'm basically trying to build the Yummy application. Now, if you were a part of the Yummy series that I have, I'm just going to leave a link right there where we built this application. If you're not aware of this, then maybe you want to go ahead and check that out. But if you're aware, good job. So we are building this application. And first of all, we have the food category all set up. All right. So now we want to work on the popular dishes. What we do is just we go ahead, open Xcode, write some code, and then we go ahead and add that category in there. Very simple, right? There's no conflict whatsoever. I'm just writing into a single code base, right? Now let's see what happens if we want to collaborate. Now at my left, you can see where we have myself, and I worked on the feature to basically represent the food category. Now at the right side, you can see that we have, well, you're right, I think. We have Sandy that is at the same time working on the popular dishes category, okay? Now, ideally, we're trying to have one application, but in this case, both myself and Sandy have two copies of the same application. Now, in my own copy, I'm working on the food category. In Sandy's copy, she's working on the popular dishes, okay? Now, Sandy has worked on hers and I've worked on mine, and then Sandy brings her work or her code base into mine. So the next thing that happens is I have two copies of the same code, but I want to bring both of them together into a single application. So now Emmanuel is faced with some issues. How do I identify the changes that Sandy has made? And how can I bring those changes into my own code base so that we have everything running as an individual app? Now, if you think of what happens in the back, you can imagine that Sandy created some classes and she has maybe some functions, some UI. If she used like nibs or storyboards, I have to go into her folder or her file and copy those things into mine, okay? And when I've done that, then I run the application and we can see that we have two copies of, we have both our code into one copy of the application. Now you can imagine how difficult this was for Emmanuel to achieve, because you have to be aware of all the changes that Sandy had done. And then you have to manually copy them in and make sure that nothing is missing, there's no bugs introduced, and it's trouble, okay? So now let's see what happens with Git. Now we have the same project, all right, or the same kind of application. We're trying to develop Yummy, and Emmanuel is currently working on the food category, and Sandy is currently working on the popular dishes. Now, the difference here is we have a single person, or you could think of as a robot in the middle, okay? So what this robot does is initially the robot has a single copy of the application, a single project, right? And if Emmanuel wants to work on something, the robot gives Emmanuel a copy of what it has. So imagine you having, so the robot has like the application in the blank state, as you can see, and Emmanuel wants to work on the food category. So the robot says, okay, I have the blank copy. Now you work on food category in the food category field, okay? Now the same thing, Sandy wants to work on popular dishes, and the robot says, okay, take my blank sheet and work on popular dishes in the popular dishes category, in the section, okay? Now Sandy is done with her work, very good, and she wants to send this, or basically just save her work. And what she does is she pushes, or basically just adds her work to the robot, or just gives her work to the robot. And the robot determines by itself what changes have been made by Sandy. And when the robot just, and when I say robot, I mean Git, when Git basically identifies the changes that Sandy has made, then Git is simply going to basically modify the new code that it has to introduce the changes that Sandy has brought in. So basically what happens behind the scene is that Git is able to tell what the difference between its copy of the project and the copy that is coming in. And basically, since it knows what the difference is, it knows how to fix the files and basically just make sure that there's no issue whatsoever. Now, in some cases, there will be conflict, and this is going to be a topic for some other day, but whenever there's conflict, Git is going to basically present this conflict to you. So I see that you made changes here, but I also have this change here. So which one should we use? And then you basically have the final say, and you can basically say, okay, I want you to use this change, and Git says, all right, you're the boss, and just accept that. But I'm not gonna go into conflict for now. We're just trying to keep things simple for now, okay? So now, Sandy is done, and her work has been added to Git, all right? Now, Emmanuel, after 2 years of working on this simple feature, decided that he was done, and then he decided to push his code to Git. At the same time, what Git does is Git says, okay, this is the copy I have, and this time, the copy that Git has, it's the original plus Sandy's. But now it sees that some changes are coming in from Emmanuel. And it says, okay, so these are the changes I see that you've made in this file. I'm just going to automatically add those changes into the single project that I have. And then Git is going to, again, try to add everything. If everything works fine, then we have the UI built perfectly. Otherwise, it's just going to show whatever conflicts are presented, okay? So this is generally how Git works with collaboration. You're going to have different people working with different copies of the same project. Whenever they introduce changes and they try to commit or add it to the source or the base project, then Git is basically going to say, okay, so these are the changes that are coming in. This is what I have. I'm just going to figure out a way to put them so that everything still compiles properly, okay? And this is huge. Like, this is very, very important in collaboration, because it makes it very easy for you to, add code from different people without basically being aware of the changes that they have made, okay? So compared to the manual process, then a human being would be like, okay, so I have this entire code base, and I don't know, what do I think Sandy has done, and then what files do I think she added, and then try to add everything by itself. Now, behind the scene, there's a lot of complexities happening. Of course, whenever you save something, there's something called a commit, and it's something I'm going to go over sometime later on. But in this illustration, basically, I just want you to understand the general scope of what collaboration looks like, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump over to Xcode just so I can show you this kind of implementation in practice, all right? What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up Xcode, and then go ahead and click on create a new project, okay? So I'm going to be creating an app, and for the product name, I'm just going to say introduction to Git. All right, not Git, Git. Okay, so we have all these set up. Can go ahead and click on next. And where do we want to save this? I can just go ahead and save it in my desktop. But one thing that you need to be aware of is right here we have a checkbox saying create Git repository on my Mac. Now, usually whenever you're starting a new project, you would either create your project on a platform called GitHub and then download the project, which already includes Git, or you could create your project on your local device with Git, and then later on you can just push it upward to GitHub. I know I haven't spoken about GitHub now. I'm probably going to talk about this in my next video, but just so you know, if you are trying to create a new project on your laptop, then and you want to initialize this project with Git, you have to go ahead and check this particular box, okay? But if you have your project cloned already from GitHub, then you don't need to do this. Well, you wouldn't even be doing this because you probably have the project already created. But remember, if you want to create a new project, a new Xcode project, and you want the Xcode project to come with Git initialized, you just go ahead and check this box, all right? So I go ahead and click on create, and as soon as this is done, we should just have this created. Let's go ahead and make this full screen, and go ahead and select F11. All right. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to try to basically reproduce the illustration that I just gave you on, like the illustration. So first things first, if you go over to the launch screen, you can see that we have a blank screen, okay? So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to basically add a label here and here to basically represent the starting point for this project. Now, I would do that in storyboard, but in order to make sure that we don't run into some conflicts and not confuse you, I'm just going to do it by code, okay? So I'm going to go over to the view controller, and we're going to keep things very simple as much as I can. And first of all, I'm just going to say let, what's the first one? We can call this food category label. And this is going to be, and actually let's first of all just go ahead and add a stack view. I think would probably be easier. So I'm just going to say let stack view be equal to UI stack view, and I'm going to say stack view dot, and actually in order to not waste your time, I'm just going to fast forward this video so that doesn't waste your time. So stack view. Now, this looks very different from, well, quite different from what we had in the design, but again, I just want to keep things very simple. But the idea is this is going to be our base project. This is going to be the version of app that Git has, right? Before Emmanuel or Sandy, took their own copies, okay? So what we're going to do first of all is we are going to save this to be basically the new starting point of the application, all right? Now, whenever you are working with Git, there are two main things that you need to be aware of. Whenever you implement some changes, like you can see over here, we have this blue line. Basically, this basically means that everything here are changes from the previous version or the current saved or last version of the application. Now, if you click on this, you can see show change, which is basically going to be, okay, this is what was here before, and this is what is here now, okay? Now you can go ahead and hide that, and you can also do discard change. And basically discard change means remove every change that I had introduced over here, okay? And this is one of the power of Git, because Git already is aware of this as the initial starting point of this application. But now we've added everything here, and Git is saying, okay, I see all these changes you've made, and I'm just going to keep them pending, okay? Now, whenever you want to save your work, there are two things you need to do. The first thing is you need to add every change you've made, right? So when you add them, the second thing you need to do is to commit, all right? So basically, what adding means is that whenever you implement changes, all right, all of these changes are done on, you can think of as a rough sheet, all right? Just some changes are made. Now, whenever you want to save it, the first thing you need to do is add. Now, adding these changes means that, okay, so I'm sure that I'm going to commit these changes sometime in future, so I'm going to add them pending the time for saving, okay? So you can just think of it as you go into the grocery store and you're just walking down the aisle and you see some provisions, some chocolates. The moment you pick them or you're holding them and looking at it, you're basically implementing some changes, okay? But when you add that to your cart, you're basically adding it, saying, okay, I'm putting this in my cart. When I get to the checkout point, then I would commit, meaning I'm now going to pay for it and then I can move with those products, okay? So that's basically what is happening here. So first thing you need to do, add the changes you've made, then you commit. Now the question is, how do we add this? Now, there are multiple ways we can do this. First of all, we can add by code by simply using git add like that. But I'm not going to go into like the code for now. What I'm going to do is basically show you how things can be done in Xcode. Now, if you want me to go over like the code using terminal, then just go ahead and let me know, and I'm just going to do that in maybe another video. All right. So what we want to do first of all is we want to add this. Now, if you go to the top, you're going to see where we have source control. Now, in source control, you can go ahead and say commit. Okay. Now, when you click on commit, if you look at the left-hand side, you're going to see that we have a couple of files or some, well, just one here. And this is basically us adding. Now, because we're using Git, whenever you try to commit, by default, it's going to basically list out all the files that have changes. All right. Then you can go ahead and check or uncheck. Now, the idea or the fact that you are adding or checking or unchecking is basically adding or removing. Okay. So if you know you want to commit, remember you have to add first. This is you adding this file's changes again. So you can see this is what the file looked like before, and you introduce all of these changes. And now I've gone through all these changes and okay, I know I want to, pay for this. I want to commit these changes. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay, check this. All right. Now, after doing that, the next thing, if you look over here at the bottom, you can see enter commit message. Now, this basically is describing what the changes you've made are. Okay. So these changes basically help us later on to say, okay, so I saved my work at this stage. What exactly does this saved work contain? Okay, it's like we're doing a checkout. When you go into checkout, you have a receipt that has all the items you bought. All right, so the receipt with all the items you've bought is you can think of as your commit message. But in commit message, it is more of a description. So you can go ahead and write everything to be detailed, but the idea is the commit message is supposed to tell you what the commit is about, what the commit has. Okay, so in this case, what did I do? I just did like the initial setup. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm just going to say initial setup as my commit message. And now I can go ahead and commit one file. Now that this is done, you can actually see that the blue line that we had before has gone away. Now what that means basically is that this is the new base or the new version that Git has. So if you go ahead, just think of what we had initially, the Git that we can see at the top is basically what this is, okay? So now that we have this, what we want to do is we want Sandy and Emmanuel to basically have this or basically work on their features from this particular state, okay? So if we look at the design again, right here, we want Emmanuel to put in some design right under the food category, and we want Sandy to put her design just under the popular dishes, okay? So how do we do that? Now in Git, we have something called branch, okay? And the idea of creating a branch is like you taking a copy of the base branch or the current environment. You can just think of it as Git has a book, okay? If you want to create a branch out of Git, all right, you're basically creating a copy of what Git already has. And that copy of Git is going to be your new work, and then you can make your changes on your own copy, okay? So currently we are at our base branch, and if you look right at the top here, you can see that we have our base branch is called main, okay? So main is basically the base branch, wherever the Git workflow started or wherever your project started, and by default this is created, okay? So right here I want Emmanuel to create his own copy of this project, okay? So how do we do that? So what we can do is go over to this icon right here. This is called I think source control, blah blah blah, source control navigator, right? So when you go to this place, you can go over to repositories, and you can basically see this is our project. And right here, you can see what the branch we're currently on is. So what copy do we currently have? The copy we have is main, which is basically the same as this one, okay? So you can go ahead and expand this, and you can see a list of all the branches we have. Currently, we only have main, all right? So what we can do is on the main, because you want to create a copy of something. Whenever you say you want to create a branch, you're going to be creating a branch out of something. And that something is usually a branch or a tag or whatever, okay? But we want to create a branch out of main, which is the base copy of this project. So what you can do is right click and see new branch from main, okay? And you can just go ahead and click on this and say, okay, what do we want to call this branch? I want to call it Mako, all right? And this is going to be Mako's own version of the project, okay? So this is Mako's version of the project. This is the main project, all right? So what we want to do next is we want to create a copy for Sandy as well, all right? So I'm just going to click on this. Remember, just new branch. And here I'm going to say Sandy. Now we have 3 branches created. Remember, main branch is the starter project. It's where main branch is the one that has like the categories, all right? And out of the main branch, Mako created a copy so that he can work on his task. Sandy also created her own copy from the main branch so that she can work on her own, task. So what do we want to do? What we're going to do is we're going to check into Mako, all right? And we can do that in multiple ways. We can right click and click on checkout, which is going to say, okay, do you want to check out, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And yes, I want to check out into Mako. And now you can see that Mako now is the current branch. You can see over here, this is Mako, okay? So now this means that the current version of this project is Mako's own copy of the project. Now I'm going to show you what that means. I know it may sound a little bit confusing, but let's say in Mako's version, Mako wants to implement his task. Or let's actually do it in Sandy's first, because in the demonstration we use Sandy. So I'm going to show you another way that we can check into another branch. If you click on this, you can see that we have different branches over here. Now, if you just write Sandy, you can see the branch that Sandy has. You can just click on that and you can check out, all right? Now you can see that now our current branch is Sandy's branch, which is we are currently holding Sandy's copy of the project. So now Sandy wants to work on the project and implement the popular feature. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to forward this. Great. So now we've gone ahead to run this, and actually I just spotted an issue is with this point. So I'm just going to come over here, and this should actually be negative 200. And this is actually going to be a learning point for us, so you can see something great. Good. So now Sandy has worked on our feature, right? This is the best feature in the world. She has implemented the popular dishes, and this is the container, all right? So what do we want to do next? Sandy is done with her work. She wants to save her work with Git, all right? So that the next person who's going to be using this can use Git, or basically can have access to her feature. So how do we do that? Remember, just go ahead, go to source control and say commit. So I want to commit the changes. And if you look at this, you're going to see the changes that were made. First of all, I added negative over here. And then we scroll down, we can see, okay, this is her feature, okay? So here I say, add popular dishes, okay? So this is Sandy's work. And remember, this has been added. If I don't add it, I cannot commit because there's no changes to add. So make sure you add all the changes you want to commit and go ahead and commit this, all right? Now let's see, how exactly do we know whether or not this thing works? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check into Mako. So this is Mako's branch, and we're just going to check in like that. And I'm going to run this. And you can see what we have here is, it's just popular food category and popular dishes. And this makes sense because Mako hasn't done his work yet. Okay. Now let's go into main. Let's go into the main branch. And we don't see that over there. Let's go just right click, check out to the main, check out. So we are currently in the main branch, and I go ahead and run this. And still, we cannot see Sandy's work. So how exactly can we bring Sandy's work into the main branch? So remember, what we did was we basically committed our changes. So think of it as you have bought whatever you wanted to buy in the groceries. But how do we get all of the things we've bought into the main house? How do we get it into the main project? We need to do something called a merge. And basically what a merge does is what Git does automatically, which is basically bringing the changes from Sandy into the main branch, right? Or whatever branch you wanted to bring it into. So currently I'm in the main branch and I want to bring Sandy's changes into the main branch. So how do we do that? Well, just go ahead and right click and say merge Sandy into main, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this. And it says changes will be merged into the current branch, which is main. So you have to make sure that whenever you want to merge, you have to be in the current place where you want to bring changes into, okay? So if you want to bring changes from Sandy into main, you have to be on main. If you want to bring changes from main into Sandy, you have to be in Sandy, all right? So just go ahead and click on merge, and you can see automatically, without any kind of knowledge of, like, I didn't need to know what changes were made, Git automatically just brought the changes that Sandy had made. And if you look over here, you can also see the change that was made by Sandy. Now, you can see here, we're still in the main branch, right? We're still in the main branch. We'll go ahead and run this. You're going to notice that now we have Sandy's work in the main branch, okay? Still, let's go into Macro now, right? So we're gonna check into Macro, check out, and we're gonna run the app, and we're gonna notice that we still don't have all those things in, okay? So what are we gonna do? I'm gonna go over to this point, and I'm going to implement Macro's feature. And actually, let's do that right here. So how do we implement Macro's feature? I'm just gonna go ahead and forward this and say, now I'm gonna go ahead and run this, and you're gonna notice that now Macro's feature has been worked on. But you can see that we still have this error that we fixed by basically adding a negative over here, but I'm not gonna do that here, all right? So let's say Macro didn't know how to fix this, or was just so lazy that he didn't wanna fix this and just went ahead to save his work. So remember, how do we save this, right? Just go ahead and say, and actually you can also do this here. If you click on changes, you're gonna see the changes that were made. You can right click and say commit, right? So we wanna commit this particular file, and it brings us here as well, okay? So here I say add food categories, and we'll go ahead and commit this file. Great. So now Macro has implemented its changes, but remember, if you go into the main branch and we check into the main branch and we run this, we still will not see Macro's changes because it hasn't been merged yet. So Emmanuel is done, but he hasn't brought the changes into the main branch. So how do we do that? You can just go ahead, come over to here, repositories, and first of all, you have to go into the main branch, which is where we are. Then we're just gonna right click and say merge Macro into main. Click on merge, and now if we go ahead and run this application, you would even see that now Macro is here, Sandy's work is also here, and the fix is also here, okay? So this is just what collaboration can do for you. Like basically, now that we are in main, we can see that this is Sandy's work here, this is Emmanuel's work, and this fix that was implemented by Sandy, right? So this is basically how collaboration works with Git. Rather than you being aware of the changes that other members of your team have made and trying to figure out how you can merge them into your project, Git is responsible for doing that. So basically Git says, okay, I'm in charge. I know what copy I gave to you to start your project. Now, when you want to bring stuff back to me, I'm basically going to compare the differences or the changes that you made in your copy with mine, and then I'm going to merge them automatically. And yeah, this is basically in general, basic explanation of how Git works. So there's a whole lot more you can do with Git. Like I said, rather than doing stuff using like buttons and clicking and checking out, we can actually do this by code, which is actually one I prefer to use. So if you're interested in seeing how this is done by code, go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I'll consider making a video on that. There's also something called GitHub, which is a remote website or a remote location where our changes are stored. All right, I didn't cover that in this video just to keep things, because I know it's already a long video, but I'll probably make a video on that in the next video. Otherwise, if I don't, then just let me know whether or not you want to see a video on collaborating with GitHub. Okay, but yeah, this is it for this video. If you have any questions, I hope I didn't confuse you, but if you have questions, just go ahead and ask in the comment section. If you found any value, go ahead and smash the subscribe button, if you will. And until the next video, you guys stay cool.